Like we think, and we hear this all the time. I heard this in a movie or TV show just the other day. God is super busy. He's too busy to worry about me. God is, he's got more on his mind than just thinking about me. God is, clearly he's got bigger fish to fry, and that's why I'm ignored. That's why my prayers aren't answered. That's why my when I do something, it doesn't work. It's because God is basically worrying about important stuff, and I'm not important. A verse like this is a reminder that that's not how God thinks. So this is interesting that today's verse is then he poured water into the basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel that was wrapped around him. So it's interesting to me that's the verse, because that was what the sermon on Sunday was all about, right? I don't know, maybe they're reading from the same whatever, Bible list, or what do they call that again? What's the thing where they got a whole bunch of Bible verses that you read over a period of 3 years? Lectionary. Maybe they're reading from the same lectionary, but his sermon was really good, and the whole concept of the sermon was another take on the washing of the disciples' feet that I hadn't thought of before, or I hadn't been introduced to. Usually what you see there is Jesus is a servant of all. Jesus is humble, right? Jesus is focused on demonstrating, once I leave, this is how I want you to treat each other. You're not supposed to be fighting over who's better like you've been doing for the last 3 years. You're supposed to be serving one another. And he said something on Sunday that was really interesting, and that was how everything in that moment was really pointed towards the cross. He was thinking about the cross. He was worried about the cross. He was going to Gethsemane. The end of his journey was coming. Like, this was the culmination of his entire life was about to happen. And he knew it. He knew when he left that night and he walked out and he went to the garden that he'd be arrested. He knew that he'd be falsely tried and then hung on a cross and tortured. He knew that was coming. And what was the point that I guess the pastor's trying to make in that section was to say, and yet, despite the fact that he had so much on his mind, and the most important thing that's ever happened in humanity was his job, he stopped the Lord's Supper. What we call the Lord's. He stopped it, and he got up and he went and served people that didn't understand what he was doing. He had to explain it to them. He had to, he had to contend with. He washed Judas's feet. You know what I mean? Like, he washed the feet of the one who was about to betray him in an hour or two or whatever. Like, this was a moment where if it was us, you think about it, if things are important in your life, right? You're culminating, big deals are happening. You're like, man, I've got this job happening. I've got this stuff at home happening, and I've got everything's kind of working. I've got like 1,000 things to do. And then all of a sudden you have this moment where you've got people around you that you care about. It's easy for us to go, and the people who love us to go, yeah, deal with your own stuff, right? Take care of it. You got to do your thing. You don't need to worry about us. You do you, man, because we're behind you. Or just say, you know what? This needs to be about me right now because I need the energy. I can't expend it on other people. I need the focus. I can't lose focus on this thing. I need to, you know what I mean? I need to go. And yet, what we see in Christ is him stopping, pulling the brakes on everything, taking off his shirt and taking off his jacket and sitting down and spending, like, how long would it take to wash the feet of the 12, right? It'd take a while, I would think, because if you sat down there and you washed them and you dipped them, and even if it was ceremonial, right, you're washing whatever, like, that would take a little while. And so he pauses for 30 minutes, maybe, let's say 20 minutes on the second most important day of the in the history of the world, the day where he's going to be arrested and crucified. Like, it's a big deal. And so when I think about that, and just from the simple application, I look at it and I go, when Jesus looks at us and he thinks about you and me, there's a similarity there. Like, we think, and we hear this all the time. I heard this in a movie or TV show just the other day. God is super busy. He's too busy to worry about me. God is, he's got more on his mind than just thinking about me. God is, clearly he's got bigger fish to fry, and that's why I'm ignored. That's why my prayers aren't answered. That's why when I do something, it doesn't work. It's because God is basically worrying about important stuff, and I'm not important. A verse like this is a reminder that that's not how God thinks. That's not how Jesus thinks. He doesn't think, you know what? I'm working on Ukraine and Russia and Syria and Latvia, and I'm working in sub-Saharan Africa, and I'm working in Australia, and I've got all these things that are happening. I got to worry about United States and all the things happening there, and the church and persecution and Egypt, and I'm not worried about your stuff. Come on, but that's how we think. That's not how he thinks. He looks at us and he pulls the brakes, and he's like, yeah, you're important. Your voice is important. Your needs are important. Teaching you is important. Your future is important. Preparing you for what's next is important. Making sure that you understand that I'm there is important. And so I will engage with you on a personal level. Like the God of the universe, Jesus Christ, the Savior of all, the one who sits on the throne and receives prayers from a billion people, and he's listening to you. I think that should be really encouraging, because what the enemy will say, the enemy will come to you and he will say, God's ignoring you. God's not listening to your prayers. When God hears your prayers, you annoy him. When you keep repeating the same things over and over and over, and God is sick of hearing from you. Or God is busy. He's worrying about other stuff. Your stuff isn't important, so why even bother talking to him about it? Your stuff isn't important, so why even bother bringing it up? Verses like this, are to say there are no little things that are outside of God's purview that he doesn't want you to bring to him. There are no times where he's like pushing you to the shelf or putting you to the side and going, I don't care about you right now. I don't care about you right now. I'm gonna work on important things and you're not important. That's not what it says. He says that at the beginning of time, he looked at you, he chose you, he knit you together in your mother's womb, and he came and he saved you. And if you're a Christian, he saved you. And he's walking with you every day. He sees every single thing. And because he's God and omnipotent, he sees perfect, right to the very thoughts and intentions of your heart. And that matters. You matter. This reminder, this washing the disciples' feet, is a good reminder of how Jesus will pause, take time, care for, and teach people, just like you and me, when we don't think we're that important. Peter, it's a great example. What does Peter do? He says, you're gonna wash my feet? No way. There's no way you're gonna wash my feet, because you're the rabbi, I'm the student, you're the Lord, I'm the servant, you're the boss, I'm the employee, you're God, I'm creation. No. And Jesus says, you don't get it. You don't get it. I'm showing you something, I'm teaching you something, I'm demonstrating something bigger than you. So you need to let me do this. If you don't let me do this, you will have no part of it. That is to say, if you're not going to submit to me in this, if you're not going to let me show you this, if you're not going to let me teach you this, if you're going to try to tell me what to do, Peter, you're going to tell me how much more humble you are than me, then it's not going to work. You're not yet. Submit yourself to me. That's what he does, right? That's what he does. He goes, and Peter goes, yeah, okay, cool. I'm on board, right? In the same way, I think when God looks at you and God looks at me, there's going to be a time where you're like, I'm not that important. I know you don't listen to me. My needs are not as important as other people around the world. I think in the same way, you can kind of hear the words of Jesus go, listen, if you think you're going to out-humble me, out-serve me, out-love me, if you're going to try to deflect away from me and tell me that you won't have it, you don't want me to do to you what I want to, you don't want me to serve you in the way I want to serve you, then you can't have part of me. You're telling me what to do. You're telling me how to be God. But I want to serve you. I want to love you. I want to demonstrate to you my love and my care. So let me. Otherwise you will have no part of it. Right? I think that's a good lesson today. And it's a reminder of why we should pray, why we should open our heart, why we should continuously be connected to God because he really does care. Oh my God, don't get my car! Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Woo!
Oh, we're not dead.
I'm out. Dave! Dave, are you okay?
Dave, are you doing it?
Dave! Dave! Dave?
Dave, why?
Dave!
Dave.
Bro. Oh, Dave's